evening and welcome to ANN7 Prime with me, Cindy Mabi. We certainly value your contribution. You can engage with us on ANN7.com or tweet at ANN7TV. But for now, though, here's a look at the news headlines. Eskom Chairman Dr. Ben Ngubane rubbishes allegations of coal capture, saying real coal capture emerged in 1948 when the Nationalist Party gave 40-year coal contracts to a few big companies. He says Eskom is trying to bring real transformation in coal procurement.
We are under TPE. We have a shareholder minister. We have a DG. Why is National Treasury demanding things directly from us? If we do anything wrong, there is our shareholder minister. They should go to her and say, your institution is misbehaving. Why is this
Eskom tears International Treasury, saying there's a nonsensical campaign to discredit the power utility. They ask why Treasury is seeking answers from Eskom instead of approaching via shareholder minister. Eskom rejects insinuations that coal sourced from Tegeta was non-compliant, saying money paid to Tegeta was only for compliant stockpiles. Questions the National Treasury for singling out Tegeta for advance payments when the Big Four have benefited the most. The Communications Workers Union has withdrawn an interdict application against MTN to stop its outsourcing plans. And it's the end of the road for suspended Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff. She has been impeached for breaking Brazil's budget laws. Eskom CEO Brian Molefe has come out all guns blazing against detractors. He defended the allegations against the organization, specifically regarding engagement with Tegeta over coal contracts. Briefing the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises on the annual report and financial statements for 2015-16, Molefe said the charges were unfounded.
We have given all information that National Treasury...
Dealing with charges relating to Tegeta, Molefe says all the dealings with the company are above board. Rubbishing allegations of substandard coal supply, Molefe said the charges are being leveled hold no water.
The objection is not really the substance of the transactions that we have done with Tegeta. The objection seems to be that we should not have done business with Tegeta at all. Nobody comes and says this transaction should not have been done because it does not benefit Eskom. The issue of the substandard coal has absolutely no basis.
The Tegeta contract, when it came in, it actually opened the eyes of the entire government and the entire public of South Africa to say, this is how we can then be able to look after Eskom in terms of ensuring that Eskom gets value for the money it actually expends in generating and transmitting energy. So the Tegeta contract, in terms of the costs per ton, are significantly lower. I think it's even half of what the big boys of the old order contractors have been charging Eskom.
Refuting Treasury's assertion that Eskom was not cooperating with them over coal contracts, Eskom said they have provided all the information sought from them. Insisting that all Eskom projects were watertight, they said the attempts to discredit Eskom is nonsense.
There was no desire on our side to be non-compliant or not to provide information or to hide anything. We have given everything to the Treasury, and to the extent that they think that there is more information that is required, we are ready to comply.
Defending his interactions with the Guptas, Molefe said that there was no proof to back the charges against the family and therefore no grounds to stop conducting business with their companies.
We have to consider them like everybody else, and that is required of us by a document no less than the Constitution. That is all that I have said on the matter. I don't know if by saying so that makes me a captured person. Perhaps I'm captured, but I'm captured by the Constitution, not by the Guptas. I'm captured by the principles of human rights, that if you're going to make an allegation, people have said even today in this meeting that people have been found guilty, guilty. But it looks like now people are found guilty without any evidence. Not to do business with Tegeta would require us to blacklist them. We would have to inform them that we cannot do business with them and provide reasons why we would not be able to do business with them. And therein lies my problem. I do not know what the reasons are, other than gossip and innuendo. What have they done? What laws have they broken? And what has been done about it? Because I just work at Eskom, and I need to be told, don't do business with them for these reasons. I get labeled to be a Gupta person just because I will not break the laws of our country, which says I cannot blacklist them without a reason. Until we can get a reason to blacklist them, I'm afraid if they apply for they bid for a transaction, if they apply to do work with us, we have to consider them like everybody else. And that is required of us by a document no less than the Constitution.
Rubbishing allegations of Eskom being captured in any way, Eskom chairman, in no uncertain terms, also defined what he called the real Eskom capture. Dr. Ben Ngubane told parliamentarians the real Eskom capture emerged in 1948 during the Nationalist Party rule when huge repayments were made to major coal companies. He said that he hoped to bring about true transformation in the power utility by not renewing contracts of the Big Five.
Captured in 1948. When the nationalists came to power. We have contracts at Eskom that have lasted 40 years, which were approved by the Nationalist Party government, giving huge prepayments, billions of dollars to the Anglos, to the other companies that were mining coal, the 5 coal suppliers to Eskom, giving contracts by the Nationalist Party government. Those shareholders sitting in London all over the place have benefited on the sweat of our miners, have benefited taking money from this country because of the state capture. So please, when we talk of state capture, let us be clear what we are talking about. Eskom wants to effect transformation in this country at a fundamental level. We want to not renew the contracts that are coming to an end belonging to these 5 big companies. We want to supply small miners, promote black suppliers. We need exemption in terms of the PFMA laws, because the conditions are not the same. You cannot get the same guarantee from a start-up. So you as legislators, please look at these issues, because they're blocking the advancement of black people in this country.
And to help us unpack the developments of the day, we have political analyst and economist Tsepo Khadima. We have Mzwanele Mani, who is from the Decolonization Foundation, and Nazim Hawa is Group CEO of Oak Bay Investments. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time. Can one safely sum up today's events in that Tegeta is vindicated, but most importantly, that the big elephant in the room is the lack of transformation in the coal sector? I'll start with you, Tsepo.
Yeah, I think we would like to preface it in this way. Today is actually a day where we should all be celebrating as South Africans. Based the presentation, the brief that Eskom made, led by Chairman of the Board, Dr. Ben Ngubane, Mr. Brian Molefe, who is the CEO of the company, clearly this is cause for celebration. What did we find out today? We found out that this entity, compared to 18 months ago, is a different company altogether. It is stable. For more than a year, there has been low load shedding. Their energy availability factor has increased from 69% to 78%. Clearly, you can see that they are well on the road to being a low-cost producer, which is fundamental to any utility anywhere in the world, to be a low-cost producer. They are sitting a company that when you look at March of 2015, it was said to have no more than 3 months of cash left. Today, we were told, which we should celebrate, that in fact from the cost-saving measures that were implemented, the company's got over 18.5 billion rand, or has realized 18.5 billion rand worth of savings. Now, I'm saying, if it was a different country, if the politics were not polarizing our society, certainly this is to be celebrated. Both Mr. Brian Molefe as well as the chairman of the board, they would have been dubbed managers of the decade in terms of the turnaround that they have been able to achieve. March of 2015, there were very strong calls to put Eskom into business rescue. And that clearly would have been privatization of this very important utility by stealth. So today, what I'm saying, that stability is very important for our economy, because it then means that those energy-intensive industries are able to have certainty of supply, therefore they can be able to what? They've got sustainability. When you look at new investment that should be coming in, is very much reliant on energy, and the assurance or certainty of availability of energy at the least cost possible, certainly something that is worth to be celebrated.
You see, that response doesn't necessarily sell. It's not sensational. It's not sexy. That's why it won't make headlines. So can we really simplify this to mean that the big players are licking their wounds, because now here is a smaller player who's disrupting the market? Mzwanel.
Yeah, look, I think actually, firstly, I think Eskom must be commended. It must be commended for upholding the supreme law of this country, which is the Constitution. All the arguments by the CEO of Eskom were rooted on the Constitution. So I really think it's very important that that document must really be respected. So Eskom has acted in line with the Constitution. So it must be respected and applauded for that. But at the same time, I think it's actually quite a sad day today at another level. It's a sad day because it then means that South Africa has reached a crossroad. What is crossroad? South Africa must now decide which route to take. It's either we continue upholding the Constitution, or we go the road of not upholding the Constitution. But the problem is that because most of the South African market is held by the financial institutions, there's a pushback. Already today, we get this announcement that this future growth asset management has now suspended funding on 6 SOEs. We must not look at that lightly. That is actually a beginning of, and you know how these financial institutions work. It's a head mentality. Others are going to do the same. So basically, it's a response against transformation. That's how it's got to be seen. What Eskom has done is a step in the right direction in terms of transformation. What this future growth has done now is actually saying, if you want to transform, then we're pulling out. Yeah. So I think it's a very sad day in the country today, because we have people that are saying they're going to use their pairs to frustrate. I mean, if you look right now, that before you come in, if you look at the implications of what they've done, it actually is a precursor for the rating agencies, because basically this step by a future growth now, what it means is that the confidence on our SOEs has been lowered, which sets a stage for a downgrade, which sets a stage for a junk status. It's a very sad day.
Mr. Howard, I mean, you could argue that you've been vindicated as Oak Bay Investments, but again, what difference will this make to the public narrative now that Eskom has come out with their report?
No, it's a very difficult question to answer. I think the public narrative, I think we operate today, I think, in a toxic environment where myths, innuendos have become fact in a lot of people's lives. I think for me, I think it's been a sad week. We've had a shareholder decision to walk away from us, not because they wanted to, but because they thought it was in the best interest of the rest of our business. And you know, I've had a lot of my colleagues coming to me to say to me, this is one of the best shareholders they've worked for. So it's a very sad day. I'm hoping it will make some change. I think we've held all along that we've done nothing wrong. We've held all along that we have total respect for the law, that every transaction has been right for the business. It's been at arm's length. It's been transparent. We've done nothing untoward in any one of those transactions. But, you know, the South African public, I think, has been fed a diet of innuendo and myths. And my only appeal out of today's events is that we'll ask our people to open their eyes and see what's happened, and indeed to look forward, because I think today is perhaps the start of a battle that will continue. I think the battle for our economy has been very muted for the last 20-odd years. And the harsh reality, we sit 20 years later with so little transformation in our economy. It's unbelievable.
Let's get an academic point of view. We're joined by Professor Yanni Rousseau, head of the School of Economic and Business Sciences, at WITS. Thanks so much, Professor Rousseau. Just in ventilating the whole debate around economic transformation, long overdue, where the second CODESA was called for. Do you think this is the beginning of a meaningful debate, or at least that we can see a more meaningful reform?
Good evening, Cindy. Good evening to your panelists, and good evening to the viewers. Cindy, in my view, what we are seeing here is really government policy playing out in the public domain. We really need clear leadership from the government, and specifically from President Zuma under these circumstances. It is really in no one's interest if we have state-owned enterprises arguing with the National Treasury in the media and in the public. Likewise, if we have questions about a place like SAA not publishing its financial statements, and we can understand that a place like Future Growth is not prepared to buy bonds of an organization like SAA if they cannot publish financial statements in a period like 10 months.
Yeah, Professor Rousseau, just coming back to the issue of the coal suppliers, particularly the historically long-standing lopsided contracts that the big 5 coal mining companies have benefited, and juxtapose that with the national imperative of transformation. Do you think that the playing fields have been leveled and that there's adequate opportunity for smaller players to come in?
Naturally, we need transformation in our economy, Cindy. And on this topic, it will be necessary to look at the individual contracts to see whether the playing field has indeed been leveled, to see whether all these suppliers can supply coal of the same quality under the same conditions.
All right, let's invite Andile Mqiltama. He is the convener of the National, or rather Black First and Land First. Andile, thanks so much for your time. This is something that you've been calling for, and yet again we get that warning bell saying that there will be a catastrophe should we tamper with Treasury or even the financial institutions. What is your view?
Firstly, we must also join the voices that are celebrating, saying we must celebrate the achievement of Eskom. It's very important, and that patriotic leadership and management. In fact, we should be saying to Eskom, they must continue doing the good work and ensure that we have free electricity for all. The attack on Eskom is a political one, and is led by white capital. Treasury has been captured and is an arm now of the white imperialists and settler interests who feels the patriotic leadership of Eskom is threatening their interests by allowing more black people to come into that sector. We must remember that white capital is absolutely unhappy that only 5% of Eskom supply come from the Gupta family-related businesses. They don't want that. They want their monopoly, and they have decided to go out and to attack the leadership of Eskom, to discredit them, to make sure that they get out of those jobs so that lackeys can come in who can serve the interests of white capital. But the big problem here is the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, who has become an agent of white capital. He is the one basically giving confidence to these forces, and we know how he was appointed. We must not beat about the bush. Pravin Gordhan was appointed by white capital, the same white capital who now we've come to discover he has shares in their companies. He is a minister that represents the interests of white capital, and using that ministry, the treasury, to pursue the agenda of recolonization and further colonization and stopping transformation. Pravin is compromised. In fact, we are prepared as BLF to say he's even corrupt. If you look at the relationship between himself and the companies that he has shares in, the same companies that have forced our government to appoint him as Minister of Finance. So we must not be surprised what is happening at Eskom. It's part of the attack by white capital because it wants its hegemony back. We as a people now must make a decision. I think it is not even to defend the constitution. The decision we must make is this. Do we want transformation or not? If we want transformation, we must get rid of Pravin Gordhan. The president has to let that man go because he's associated with capital which itself is corrupt. I mean, things like a British American tobacco, you must see it is illegal. It is a company which runs illegal activities. It must not be allowed. That minister must go so that we can have a new pro-people entities.
Andila, I see there's somebody wanting your attention. We'll come back to you, but just in dealing with these matters, so it doesn't sound like a conspiracy theory, because obviously it's information that is not in the public domain. It's selected as such to push a particular agenda. What needs to happen next, Tsepo?
Yeah, I think what Professor Rousseau said is what I would like to build on further, and that is my gravest worry is that National Treasury is at a high risk of becoming a bolombolo tiger, which means created by the public relations consultants and inflated by the media. And that certainly is not a healthy situation, because we see that there is an overreach whereby I strongly submit that they are acting ultra-virus, and more so specifically to the issue of Eskom. As the chairman of Eskom, Dr. Benny Ngubane, has articulated even before Parliament today, that the line ministry is the Department of Public Enterprises, and Minister Lynn Brown is the one who ordinarily should have been the one who's there. So that overreach, unfortunately, is putting us in an untenable situation as a country. So this public spats, be it in terms of the disagreements that are playing out in the public gallery, certainly cannot be good. And I think that National Treasury, led by Minister Pravin Gordhan, they need to be a lot more circumspect. We expect them to largely be concentrating on even the more pressing issues. And what are the more pressing issues? The more pressing issues are our economy. At this point in time, I would have been more satisfied if they were addressing issues that in the last 10 months, our economy, for example, has been revised downwards 4 times. The issue of us being beholden to the credit rating agencies, that is certainly not a sustainable, and it is in fact very much detrimental to our economy. So these are the issues that I would expect them. On the other hand, for example, we have a National Treasury that continues to push on forth with neoliberalist policies based on what is known as the Washington Consensus. And that certainly it is not been proved to work anywhere else in the world. And therefore, why are we then going that route? Why are we still beholden and seduced by the John Maynard Keynes theory of deficit financing? Those are the issues that National Treasury needs to be paying particular attention to. In terms of Eskom, I'm maintaining that there is an overreach, they are acting ultra-virus. And what it does do, however, the negative effect it has, is we now seeing even the fund managers such as Future Growth making the decision that they did do today, because in fact they are not very much informed. When you listen to the principal of Future Growth, as he explains himself, you can clearly see that he's not well versed with what the issues are, but based on the noise that is playing out in the public gallery.
So you're saying that the National Treasury is acting as if it were government on its own?
National Treasury is not a super ministry. There is no provision for it to be a super ministry. National Treasury needs to be working in concert, and National Treasury needs to do what it needs to do. That is economic policy and fiscal policy reform, the much overdue reforms that they should be focusing on. And we can discuss that, we can debate those at length, but see, where do we need to take this economy forth? Right now, we are in negative growth territory. We are back to the pre-1994 days. That certainly, it cannot be a track record of success. It cannot be said that this treasury under this minister is doing a sterling job, because the numbers are completely telling a different story. So what am I saying? I'm insisting truly that we need to really have everybody playing in their respective roles. And what they are doing now, it doesn't help us. For example, this investigation they are engaging in, they have not informed us. We are none the wiser as to what is the end game, what happens at the end of this investigation. And more so, why only investigate one company? Why are you not investigating the entire 40 billion rand coal procurement budget of Eskom, whereby we can truly know who are the companies that are supplying, at what price per ton, what volumes, and who are the end shareholders, the beneficial shareholders of those companies. Those are the issues. If at the end of the day they were to investigate or advise at least the Department of Public Enterprise to take on such investigation, would say it's helpful. If they were to uncover any wrongdoing, for example, they are not a law enforcement agent. What exactly remedy can they be able to mete out? So you ask yourself that why investigate something that you do not have the legal means to be able to mete out remedial action? So clearly they are misdirected, and the quicker they get back to doing the job that they need to do, the better for this republic. Right now, what they are doing, I'm very, very much resolute on this point that it cannot be helpful for our economy. They need to really, I think, conduct themselves in a much more better light. There are many other issues we can look at, but certainly we expect National Treasury to show us the lead.
Sure, there should be a more concerted effort in dealing with the issues of transformation from the likes of Black Management Forum and all other associated forums in trying to deal with issues of transformation. It is still inconceivable for smaller players to want to enter a predominantly white male industry such as mining. We have charters and all sorts of interventions that have been there, Mzwanele, but for some reason it's still lagging.
Yeah, look, I think what Eskom has done, I think all SOEs should look at Eskom as an example of fulfilling what the Constitution is saying. What Eskom has done is properly constitutional. Section 217 of the Constitution that talks to procurement has got 3 clauses, and it's very important to understand these clauses. The first one talks to efficiencies and everything. This is what everybody else keeps focusing on, to the total exclusion of the next 2. The next 2 clauses, the one subsection 2, talks to the issue of empowerment. Yes. Talks to the issues of protecting and advancing people that had been disadvantaged by apartheid, as it were. This is what Eskom is trying to do, to make sure that this economy is an inclusive economy. By the way, this is an ANC resolution that let's have an inclusive economy. So what Eskom is doing is in line with what African National Congress is talking about when they talk about an inclusive economy. Goes further, subsection 3 of that same section then says there must be a legislation to ensure that 2 is effected, to ensure that empowerment is effected. Instead, we have a triple PFA, which is actually affecting subsection 1. So we are saying that indeed what Eskom is doing is proper, what Eskom is doing is constitutional. What needs to happen as a matter of agency is that triple PFA must indeed be repealed, because the argument that National Treasury is probably making is probably just some argument based on the procurement policy, which is unconstitutional, as it were. So the sooner everybody in this country respects the Constitution as a supreme law of this land, the better.
Okay, Professor Rasoda, earlier on you were talking about the public spend, but what was happening at the Portfolio Committee in Parliament today had to deal with misconceptions and allegations around Eskom and the procurement of coal. Do you think that this now can put the matter to rest in that business was indeed done above board?
It seems indeed that business has been done above board, but I fail to understand why it was necessary to go such a long way to get to the bottom of the matter. If it is such a simple matter, why could the facts not have been placed on the table a long time ago to put this matter to rest? A lot of damage has been done, a lot of people has become very angry, a lot has been written about the country that really didn't serve the country or the people living in this country their best interests. So why was it necessary to go to these lengths to get to the bottom of the matter? Why could these facts not have been published earlier?
Mr. Howard can take that one.
Well, from my side, I would look at it a bit differently. Is why was Tegeta singled out? Tegeta is, I know we talk about 5%, but the 5% is built on us purchasing another business from Glencore. In reality, we supplied on average about 80,000 tons of coal out of Eskom's total call of probably 10 million tons per month. We are nothing. We're the ant on the butt of the elephant. But we were singled out for that investigation. The harsh reality, I think, Tegeta and I think the Oak Bay group of companies is probably one of the first companies to really enter the beast, as it were, to enter where historically the older empires have ruled. And I think essentially this is the backlash we've faced right now. We've entered an area we should not have entered into. But for the sake of the professor, and he made some comment early on about quality of coal and so on, we've never supplied coal of any lesser quality than required by Eskom. We've met every requirement that Eskom has made on us. But for the record, we have 2 coal contracts in place at the moment, Professor. And of those 2 coal contracts, Brakfontein we supply at 13.50 Rand per CV, and Henrina we supply at 7 Rand per CV. Eskom's average price would be closer to 19 Rand per CV. So we have considerably lowered the cost of coal to Eskom.
Professor Rousseau, I mean, this kind of information has always been in the media, I suppose, not particularly in favor of Tegeta or Oak Bay investments, but there was nothing untoward or any secrecy around it. So what is your response to Mr. Hauer's remarks?
Well, my response is very simply, if the coal is of the same quality, supplied under the same conditions, and the coal is indeed cheaper, it is very good for Eskom to buy cheaper coal rather than more expensive coal. However, it will be necessary for Eskom to be fully transparent, put all the contracts out for public scrutiny, and give all the facts for the public to scrutinize, to decide what indeed is going on. Eskom is a monopoly. It's not that one can argue that there are any trade secrets or any competitive disadvantage to them to open their contracts to public scrutiny and make it available. If there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to hide, and then this story will be out of the media very, very soon. But then, in the interest of transparency, publish everything for public scrutiny. This could have been behind us a long, long time ago, but for the fact that the information was not forthcoming.
But why is it that we're not as intrigued about the big 5 that have historically benefited and taken the lion's share when it comes to coal procurement to Eskom, and our fixation is more with a smaller player called Tegeta?
Well, that's difficult for me to judge because I have no particular views on coal contracts to Eskom other than seeing in the media some claims that the coal is being supplied under different and less favorable conditions. So that is a very easy allegation to answer. Make the information known. And for some reason, up to today, Eskom had elected not to publish the necessary information to subject this to public scrutiny. So this is really a question you need to ask Eskom. I'm not in a position to answer on behalf of Eskom why they've elected not to do this. But again, the point I made earlier, what we need at the moment is clear and decisive leadership from President Zuma. He's the President of South Africa, is our President. He should not be missing in action. He should be in South Africa at this point in time, and he should take clear, decisive leadership in what is clearly a national crisis. We cannot afford an absent president at the moment.
But Professor, we're not oversimplifying the issue. You know, you refer to media reports on Sunday. And, you know, the difficulty I have is how much stock to be placed in these media reports, and why would it prompt an official investigation of any kind? You know, I watched some of the portfolio committee today, and the Sunday Times, which is supposedly a very good newspaper, and I say supposedly very deliberately, because I think they've had a run of very bad errors in the past, spoke about Tegeta getting a contract with Eskom without a water use license. It's absolute rubbish. We had a water use license 5 months before. But that same question came up in Parliament today as fact to Eskom. So, you know, the worry for me is where we find ourselves in this whole debate right now is that we have a media that I think has become captured that has been fed a diet of lies by vested interest and then repeats it as fact. And then some of our regulatory agencies then take that facts and believe it, or supposed facts, and then launch investigations based on this innuendo and an absolute tripe, if I can call it that. So it's a much broader issue.
I mean, look, Cindy, I think my views in this regard are well known. I always refer to what Benjamin Franklin said, that the only truth in the newspapers is the advertisements. And I think publications such as Sunday Times, and they know that this is not personal, they know that I'm telling the truth. Let me give an example. A few years ago, they ran a front page story that Chancellor House was going to benefit from load shedding by selling coal to Eskom from a mine that they bought in Swaziland. And those of us who are in the industry who know this, the ins and outs, were shocked and horrified that a publication such as that can make such a bold claim which is completely nonsensical. In what way? The coal, the geology in Swaziland is completely different. It is anthracitic coal. None of the Eskom boilers use anthracite coal. But here we were told, the nation was told that now Chancellor House is going to be selling coal into Eskom when there was no basis, any shape or form, technically, scientifically, howsoever. So those are the things that the likes of Sunday Times need to deal with. Even this issue of a water use right, by the way, is important for those that are in the industry to remember that we are currently working under the Minerals and Petroleum Resource Development Act of 2004. Why am I mentioning that? Because in that, the management of water use rights for industrial applications, such as in the mining sector, it introduced a new procedure and a new regime. But when you look at the companies that we keep on referring to, the big five that have been supplying coal to Eskom since Moses, none of those have ever, in any shape or form, had to go and meet the same requirement of a water use right. Why? Certainly because what Eskom is interested in is the coal. The issue of who is responsible for water use rights, that is the Department of Mineral Resources, that is their job. Nobody would mine unlawfully because then the department would take care of that. So these are the things that I'm saying the media needs to conduct themselves in a more responsible manner because it leaves us in an environment such as the one that is currently now polluted, and as a country we are all suffering. So these are very serious question, and there's a need for introspection by the press in South Africa to conduct their affairs and to report truthfully and to ensure that whenever they do so, they do not prejudice the rights of others. But where are we now? If you look at the key issues at hand with regard to Eskom, which is a very important state-owned company, I maintain the line that based on what I have seen and what had been said in the last 18 months, there is this concerted effort to paint Eskom as a company that is dysfunctional, that in fact its only survival can be through privatization or breaking it up. And that certainly is not in the interest of this economy. We've got many instances whereby such moves have failed. Why would we as South Africa go and put ourselves in such a risk economically, which for the next 50 years, we would not be able to then regenerate this economy to be able to grow at the level that it does. So this issue, it should go beyond just one company being Tegeta. We should really look holistically and say, where are we going as a nation? And are we engaging in the right type of a debate to ensure that we have a stable state-owned company called Eskom?
And in the interest of nation building and economic growth, Professor, the leadership at Eskom, Brian Molefe, is saying that the media systematically is trying to discredit Eskom, and by so doing, of course, will devalue the asset and give room now for the whole privatization argument. What's your view?
Well, in my view, Eskom is a public utility. Eskom is a natural monopoly. So I must make the point that I think it's morally wrong to pay the executive management of Eskom bonuses for performance. They're a monopoly and they must perform a duty, namely the generation and distribution of electricity. If Eskom can do that to the satisfaction of everybody in South Africa, Eskom can stay a state utility. As long as they can perform effectively and efficiently that duty. But I must make the point that there's no reason to pay any bonuses to any management of a monopoly state-owned enterprise. They can earn fair salaries, they should not earn bonuses. As long as they can then fulfill their constitutional and legal mandate, namely to supply electricity to all South Africans in a cost-efficient way, there's no problem with keeping it as a state
But
utility.
Professor, you're suggesting that the mold had been set in the sense that contractual agreements, including the previous regime, having benefited from these particular contractual fringe benefits, that for some reason now it's untoward for Eskom to enjoy the same.
No, what I'm saying is it is not right to pay bonuses to the management of a monopoly company like Eskom. I say pay them a fair salary for the duties they perform as executives and pay them as they should be paid managing a large company. But I can see no motivation for paying them executive bonuses. At the same time, I'm saying, as long as Eskom can perform its duties efficiently and effectively, there's no reason why it cannot be a state utility, a state-owned enterprise.
All right. I strongly disagree with that. I think that you need to pay a fair wage. Now, let's look at what's happening at Eskom. The management that is there, you have to pay for that skill. You have to retain that skill because the skill of Mr. Brian Molefe and the skill of Dr. Benny Ngubane and a whole host of other executives there, by the way, they can work anywhere else in the world. For you to be able to attract them, you need to therefore be able to pay them salaries that are in line with what is best practice, benchmarked on other utilities of a similar nature elsewhere. And this whole thing that, well, if you're a state-owned company, therefore you should be on salary that is less than. Let's look in our banks, for example. Most of our banks, which ordinarily are holding public funds on trust in terms of deposits, their CEOs are earning what, 30 million rand plus on average. Most of the mining companies that are supplying Eskom, they are earning salaries that are 11 million rand plus. And if you are going to want to retain the right level of skill to manage Eskom and to bring us the results that we saw today being presented in Parliament, let's look at an entity that in March 2015, they said it had 3 months of cash left. Today, for the year ended March 2016, it delivered a 4 billion rand profit. And I tweeted 3 months ago that come the end of March, for the financial year ending March 2017, I can comfortably, from what I'm reading, that Eskom will deliver well over 10 billion rand in net profit. That it means what? You've got the right people who are at the helm, and those people must be rewarded. This argument, unfortunately, it belongs to the yesteryear.
I'm actually shocked.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I'm actually shocked that this professor can say this. In fact, if you look at it, I'm wondering if this professor could say this prior to 1994, which Eskom was still the same category kind of organization when it was run by white people and so on, with white CEOs and whatever. Is the professor saying this now simply because black people are in charge? Is this professor having a problem with black people? And this is the problem in this country. This is the colonial mindset that we need to rid ourselves of. This is why we have the foundation like we have now. We cannot continue in South Africa to have people that will find peace with poor black people, to find peace with a situation where only white people must be in the affluence and all that, that every time that black people must be rewarded in line with their expertise, in line with world-class remuneration packages, all of a sudden it's a problem. This just shows the level of colonialism that we have here, that when black people are looked at, people just see modern-day slaves. And why should you pay a slave like this when you should be paying just enough? So I really take a serious objection, serious offense to what this professor said to say. I think it's actually racist, what this professor has said.
All right, before you reply, Professor, just to bring in another dimension of what Dr. Ngubane was saying, that billions of repayments have been given to Eskom. I just want to, I just want to advance the debate, and we can ventilate the others a little bit later. But what Dr. Ngubane was saying essentially is that we pretend as if this country only came into existence in 1994, and that there were billions and billions of rands that were taken out of this country through the 5 big coal companies, and they continue to benefit on the backs of black miners. That is the debate that we are not having, Professor, and I think in the interest of transformation, this is what needs to be on the table.
Cindy, I take serious offense at what Nzanlile has said. Remember, there are white and black executives at Eskom, and black and white executives getting bonuses. So, moreover, I'm also on record previously that I've said what South Africa need, in my view, is a maximum wage that should be applied beyond state-owned enterprises, even in private enterprises, as profit sharing and the likes have really gotten out of hand. And there I've included all companies, irrespective of whether they are managed by white, Asian, black or colored people.
All right,
so for Ms. Nzanlile to make this racial issue is completely out of place.
All right, I just want to take you back to that question, sir, that transformation is hindered because we failed to look beyond the effects of 1994, the previous regime rather, in advancing the issue of transformation. Dr. Ngubane again saying that the economy of this country was brought about on the backs of miners, and that billions of repayments have been enjoyed by the 5 big coal companies, and that in itself then means that it's even more difficult for smaller players to come in. Where's your view or your stance on transformation in the sector?
Well, naturally, transformation is needed in South Africa, in all sectors of South Africa, whether it's in the coal sector, whether it's in the electricity sector, or whether it is in the financial sector. We need transformation in all sectors of the South African economy. That is without doubt. But we are not going to get transformation in our country by paying large executive bonuses to executives in powerful positions.
But is the question not, if we're going to transform the sector or any part of our industry, is to look at the historical basis and how much it's changed since 1994. I think when I listen to Dr. Ngubane, he speaks about 80% of the coal supply from Eskom still remaining with 5 big companies. So there isn't really space for some of the small players like ourselves, and we really are a very small player. With the purchased Glencore assets, we're under 5% of the supply of Eskom. 95% is still out there. So the challenge is really, I think, a lot broader than that. And I suppose where my difficulty comes in is the damage done to our business through all these wild allegations published over the past 12 months has been significant. But I don't hear the voices calling for us to really focus on this broader transformation debate. The voices are really focused on the innuendo and the rumor mongering and the rest of it. But, you know, if I look at our own company, we had a short-term contract for Eskom where we supplied at 480 Rand a ton when the previous mining company supplied at 1,200 Rand a ton. Where's the investigation around some of those kinds of issues, which I think impacts on the common person in South Africa? Yeah. If Eskom cannot, and the basis for Eskom's health today, I think, is that there has been a resetting of the coal price by new entrants like ourselves. Yeah.
So you're saying the whole hullabaloo is, of course, the non-renewal of the 5 major companies that have enjoyed contracts for 40 years plus renewable at the end of their tenure. Is that the whole hullabaloo here?
Well, that's a serious part of it. I think what Tegeta has done, it has actually disrupted monopoly capital in its plunder into the state resources. It has disrupted the cost-plus models, which have been raping the state, basically. This is what has been happening. How can you, as a client, pay for somebody to develop, and after I've paid for them to also pay for the product? All of this. This is what has been happening all this time. Now, people have been in their comfort zone that here comes new management, here comes the transformation agenda, and then we have all these kinds of things from the professor and others. I really think that once again, let's understand what's happening in this country. 70% of the economy of South Africa is run largely by corporate. And corporate is largely white. The report from the Commission for Employment Equity keeps reporting that 70% of the top management of this country is white. So when this professor is making this statement about this thing, it's actually a racist statement. The little number of white people that are there, in fact, I think they're just collateral damage for him, because the main part, the main attack is ready to emancipate, is to disempower black people that are running these organizations. And I think I'm taking nothing back. It's very important for South Africa to embrace the issue of transformation unapologetically. This country, majority of people are black. It cannot be that in order for the financial markets to be happy, that black people must be poor. We can't continue as black people in this country to be modern-day slaves and come up with all kinds of things about public this, when in fact it's a ploy just to make sure that black people continue to earn lesser salaries so that they cannot afford property, so that they continue to be slaves. That cannot continue.
All right, let's get a different perspective. Douglas, you're calling us from the Vaal, and Jeff in Silver Lakes. Hello to you. Hi, Douglas.
Good evening, Cindy.
Hi.
I need to ask a few questions, so you've got to have patience with me tonight.
All right, keep it short, please.
Yeah, I will try. Number one is your political analyst. He himself turned around and said, the country has gone downhill since 1994.
The economy.
The country, the economy, yeah.
Okay, what's your point?
Downhill since 1994. And for somebody to go back to 1948, Isoma, to me, that doesn't make sense, because we're not living in 1948, we're living in 2016. Your guy that's the manager of Taketa or Oak Bay or whatever, he was given professional advantage because they actually came from India in 1992. Why wasn't the contract given to South Africans? Why to foreigners that only became South African citizens after 1994?
All right, Douglas, stay listening for a response.
And the other one, the guy that's so clever, that Mayani. Yeah. He's too clever for his own good, because he likes to quickly say, oh, it's the whites. The whites are getting a preferential treatment and they're not wanting to give anything to the blacks, which is a lot of nonsense.
All right, give him an
1994
opportunity to respond, Douglas. Please stay listening. Thanks for your call. We have to take other callers. Jeff in Silver Lakes, hi.
Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Look, one of the things that I think the professor is right. Because what we are saying is that once you are a monopoly and you are not profit-driven, there is literally no incentive for you to get performance bonuses because you are monopolizing the market. You are the sole player there. Now, whether you are black or white or orange, it doesn't matter. You are monopolizing the market. So your basis, yes, you ought to be remunerated, market-related, like salaries based on the performance of a similar entity worldwide. But the rationality or the essence of a performance bonus or performance based on a monopoly becomes literally irrelevant.
Okay, Jakes, thanks so much for your call. We'll take a response from Nazim, particularly when it comes to the issues around the foreign ownership of Taketa.
Well, you know, I suppose I can't blame the caller. I think he's really being infected or affected by very poor media reporting. Let me deal with a few issues in where he's very, very badly mistaken. On the first case, let me say to you that Taketa is 51% black-owned. The Gupta family doesn't own all of Taketa. 51% is in the hands of black shareholders. It took Taketa 4 years to get its first contract with Eskom. That first contract came about in March 2015, and it was for 63,000 tons of coal per month, against Eskom's total supply of 10 million tons per month. It also came at a price, as I say earlier on, of 270 Rand a ton, when I think Eskom's average price of coal is 700 Rand a tonne. It took us 4 years to get a water use license to be able to start mining coal there. Now let me deal with the family itself. The family did indeed come in 1993. But in fact, most of the family have taken on South African citizenship because they believe in this country. They've chosen to make this their home. So it's actually very worrying, it's very concerning when people repeat those kinds of untruths and accept it as fact. I think it's hurtful to some of our colleagues. Our Constitution really, and our Freedom Charter talks about South Africa belongs to all of those who live in it. So when we make these comments, you know, it really talks to us about the need for transformation, for the need for us to take stock how far or how little distance we've covered in terms of fixing our nation.
I think it would help, Douglas, also if you were to just familiarize yourself with multinational companies in South Africa and the continent, that geopolitical boundaries are limited. You know, you can do business as and where you choose to reside. Andile, just quickly on where this discussion needs to go to next. I know that you've got papers in front of the Public Protector, as does the Decolonization Foundation, to deal with the issue of capture, and you arguing that it didn't start in 1994, it started in 1948 and even beyond.
Yes, the first important thing is that we must stop being naive, hoping that South African media, the mainstream media, is going to report truthfully and in a balanced fashion. There is a war going on. We need to be absolutely clear about that. As we speak today, the democratically elected president of Brazil has been removed from office by same forces that want regime change in South Africa for the same reasons of maintaining white hegemony over the economy. This is a battle. We must choose sides. We can choose the side of being timid in the face of imperialists, in the face of settler colonialism and white monopoly capital, or we can choose not to listen to racism. I mean, this professor from Wits and this call of yours, they're all racist. We should not be wasting our time with that kind of thing. We need to be saying the president must take charge indeed, and taking charge would mean let the president be allowed to appoint ministers. Pravin Gordhan is not one of those. He was not appointed by the president, was appointed by white capital, and white capital is in control of treasury. That's the first thing we must sort out, including his own conflicted, corrupt relationship with white capital. The second thing that must happen is to praise and to encourage patriotic leadership of Eskom, of the SABC, and say continue to do that work that we are doing and make sure that the people benefit from that. Eskom, we need Eskom to be as efficient as we see this happening, and Eskom must go towards providing free electricity. It can only happen if it's patriotic leadership.
Andile, I'm sorry I have to interject there. We're seriously out of time, but I do value your contribution, and thanks, gentlemen, for joining us as well. You at home, thanks for taking the trouble to call in. We take a quick ad break. We're back with BizSense just after this.